जो कुसुमगर है उसका बेसिस हमेशा हटके ऐसा काम करने में रहा है जो भारत देश में बाकी लोग नहीं करना चाहते हैं या नहीं कर पाते हैं. सो दे आर एन इनोवेशन फोकस्ड टेक्सटाइल कंपनी. वी आर वन ऑफ द वर्ल्ड्स लार्जेस्ट मैन्युफैक्चरर ऑफ पैराशूट फैब्रिक्स. अब देखिए पैराशूट का कपड़ा भी कपड़ा ही है.
बिल्डिंग अ ग्लोबल बिजनेस, एक्सपोर्ट फोकस्ड बिजनेस, उसके अलग क्या चैलेंजेस हैं?
इंडिया में सर्वाइव करने के लिए एंड थ्राइव करने के लिए businesses have to adopt certain set of practices. They have to manage the local regulatory environment, be efficient, let's call it that.
तो ये जो अपॉर्चुनिटी है China+1 एक तो रियल है, बट हाउ फार डू यू थिंक हमारा रनवे है इसमें?
So there is no point in saying that X brand doesn't want to move out of China because there are enough and more that already want to do and already want to invest. देखिए कोई भी आदमी पैसा डाल रहा है धंधे में, वो चाहता है कि क्योंकि वो तो अगले 20 साल के हिसाब से डाल रहा है.
सही बात.
उसके बाद में यदि रूल बदलता रहे, लॉ बदलता रहे, कोई भी आके कुछ कर जाए, बड़ा डर लगता है. इंडियन गवर्नमेंट has had a mixed record in this area. See, eventually to attract brands, ecosystems have to be present.
ये इकोसिस्टम होता क्या है? पहले वो समझते हैं. Ankur, thanks a lot for joining us today and especially flying in from Mumbai to do this with us on a Sunday morning. Really happy to have you. So let's start at the top, right? I would like to first probably get into your personal journey and understand some of the inflection points that have sort of brought you to where you are right now leading a large firm.
Thanks, Ronak. My pleasure. I think rather than sort of points, there have been phases, I would say, in my life, where sort of there has been a drastic shift in how I have moved. The first one I would say, was my move from, so I grew up in a small town on the Nepal-Bihar border. I was born, brought up there. And then I think I moved to Delhi at for high school, and then I was fortunate enough to get an admission into an IIT. I think for most middle class kids, that's the gateway to a wider set of opportunities, and that was sort of like a big opportunity for me. That allowed me to transition into a great career, which moved me to consulting, and then I was able to get a exposure of the wider world outside, a limited set of career options. I think that was like a major inflection point for me. And I think the second, which is a little more personal, I would say, was so in my late 20s, I was working, I was in the US for a while, I was working there, and around that time my father passed away. So his demise brought me back to India, and around that time I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do with my career, right? Just a little bit of soul searching on who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And I think as an outcome of that exercise, I sort of made a deliberate choice to move towards manufacturing and in an operating role, and that sort of led me to where I am. I made a shift towards careers that would lead me to where I am today. I was lucky enough around that time to find an operating role at Arvind, which is a very well-known textile company, and at a very young age they entrusted me with a responsibility of running a business. So I think these two were sort of the major life-changing phases for me.
Got it. And so when you're a consultant, you're advising, and when you're running a business, right, the mindset change, right, how was that like? And
I think that's very interesting. I think now my current and we were young, we were very hardworking, but I think the quality of the work that you do suffers from the fact that you have not really run a business. I think if I were to go back and be a consultant now, I would be so much better. The problem with operators is that they get stuck into a narrow view of how they are currently doing something, and it's difficult for them to step out. And consultants really bring a very unique perspective to how they should be doing something. But the fact that they you have a narrow view and they don't have practical experience doesn't allow the advice to really take effect. So after sort of having been a consultant for so many years and then having run a business, I think the right mixture is for consultants to, I think consultants can play a great role in helping businesses, but they have to come with some experience in running a business before, so that they can really add value.
And so when you started this journey, right, when you started running your own business early on, what were some of the learnings that have now shaped into the business runner that you are today, right?
Great question. And it's good to make most of your mistakes early on, I guess. I think I definitely underplayed the role of relationships, right? I think my bias was more towards logic and objectivity than of, sort of building a relationship to get stuff done. And I think it's the same all around the world, but more so in India. I think relationships get more work done than logic, right? So that was a real big one for me. And the second that I would say is, I think strategy doesn't count for as much as just good, strong execution and implementation, right? A great strategy with mediocre implementation, does not work as well as a mediocre strategy, but an excellent implementation, right? So I think a combination of these two, right? Building a team, having your set of people believe in what you are saying, and then being able to get that done out of them. I think that's something that I basically learned as I came into running a business.
And now with Kusumgar, it is a family-owned firm to a large extent. And now that you're entering into this family-owned firm, how was that, right? It was a relatively small firm when you entered. You have grown it to close to 1,000 crore company. How does that work?
I was helped by the fact that my father also used to be a part of a family-owned business group, right?
Got it.
And in India, most large organizations and opportunity exist in family-run businesses, right? And then that's the way it has been, and that's been successful for them. Transitioning into family business, you have to understand the role that you play is that of a fiduciary for the family, right? I think you have to start by asking yourself what's right for the long-term, sort of survival and growth of the business, and keep sort of keep the entire ecosystem very stable and harmonized, right? When I came into the business, I think I loved the business. I think I fell in love with the business the first time I met the promoter, Mr. Siddharth Kusumgar. They had an excellent array of products, and they were poised for very fast growth, right? And sometimes I tell him and me that it's better to be lucky than to be good, right? And I think I was lucky enough to enter a period of time where things were lined up for an exponential growth. And we were supported by the global supply chain changes happening after COVID, right? A lot of these shifts came about that allowed us to make that transition happen. But, what I could see was they had a unique set of capabilities and competencies missing from other Indian companies, right? And Mr. Kusumgar had that vision of taking this company to the next level that allowed somebody like me to come in and execute on his vision, which was truly unique. Most Indian companies are not able to do it as well.
So before we go deeper into the other aspects, पहले धंधा समझ लेते हैं. ये कंपनी है क्या, करती क्या है?
देखिए, एक लेवल पे देखा जाए तो एंड कई लोग यही कहेंगे कि ये एक टेक्सटाइल कंपनी है, पर देखिए टेक्सटाइल कंपनी मतलब ये हम रन ऑफ द मिल प्रोडक्ट्स नहीं बनाते, हम थोड़ा हट के काम करते हैं. Amongst other things, for example, we are one of the world's largest manufacturer of parachute fabrics. अब देखिए पैराशूट का कपड़ा भी कपड़ा ही है, ठीक है. एक यदि बुलेट प्रूफ जैकेट जो बनता है उसका कपड़ा भी कपड़ा ही है. आप नॉर्मल जैकेट पहन सकते हैं, आप -50 डिग्री सेल्सियस में जो जैकेट चल पाए वो भी कपड़े से ही बनता है.
Exactly.
तो ये जो कपड़ा बना सकते हैं लोग, ये बड़े टेक्निकल टेक्सटाइल इस चीज़ को कहा जाता है. तो जो कुसुमगर है उसका बेसिस हमेशा हटके ऐसा काम करने में रहा है जो भारत देश में बाकी लोग नहीं करना चाहते हैं या नहीं कर पाते हैं. So they are an innovation focused textile company, right? And we have been very, sort of proud about that. We have been very focused about that, and we continue to only do products जहाँ पे हमें एक नीश लगता है, जहाँ पे हमें ऐसा लगता है कि हम कुछ यूनिक कर सकते हैं. सो ये हमारी कंपनी का जेनेसिस रहा है. हमेशा हमने कुछ अलग किया है, हमेशा कुछ हटके किया है. अब इससे आगे जाते जाते हम सिर्फ कपड़ा नहीं, अब हम पूरे सोल्यूशंस बनाने लग गए हैं. द लास्ट फ्यू ईयर्स हम लोगों ने पैराशूट्स पूरे सिस्टम्स बना बना के सप्लाई करने चालू किए हैं. ये भारत में अदरवाइज और किसी को करने का शायद ना तो कैपेबिलिटी है, ना शायद इंटरेस्ट रहा, लेकिन हमने ऐसा किया. सो आई थिंक दैट इज व्हाट इज यूनिक अबाउट अस. हम लोग टेक्सटाइल्स, टेक्निकल टेक्सटाइल्स के अंदर यूनिक चीजें करते हैं और उसके अंदर ही हम स्केल अप करते हैं और हम ग्लोबली जाते हैं. आज कुसुमगर का मेजॉरिटी बिजनेस एक्सपोर्ट्स के अंदर है, राइट? सो जब आप एक्सपोर्ट्स में बेचते हैं तो आप दुनिया में पूरी दुनिया के साथ टक्कर करके आपसे वो खरीदी जा रही है वो चीज, राइट? सो you automatically become you are exposed to global competition and you become the best. And you have to become the best at doing something. So that's Kusumgar. It's never very easy to explain what we do. I've tried to do my best.
And when you think about this, right, when the thing that you touched upon, building a global business, export focused business, उसके अलग क्या challenges हैं?
आपका बिजनेस है जो सिर्फ ये फोकस्ड है कि मैं इंडिया के अंदर बेचूं, इंडिया में बनाऊं, इंडिया के अंदर बेचूं, और यदि आप बाहर नहीं देख रहे हैं तो आप कभी एक एक सर्टेन माइंडसेट में आ जाते हैं कि मुझे जी मेरे ये 5 कस्टमर्स हैं, मुझे इनको सर्विस करना है. आज मैं लेट्स से मैं 100 रुपए में बेच रहा हूँ, कल को कोई दूसरा आ गया, मेरे को 99 में बेचना पड़ेगा, 98 में बेचना पड़ेगा, ऐसे ऐसे चलता जाता है. ग्लोबल कस्टमर्स को जहाँ कॉस्ट एक प्रायोरिटी है, उसके अलावा क्वालिटी, डिलीवरी, इनोवेशन, ये सारी प्रायोरिटीज होती हैं. ये चीजों पे ध्यान नहीं जाता है. क्योंकि कुसुमगर का पहले से ही क्वालिटी, इनोवेशन, इनके ऊपर प्रायोरिटी थी, तो हम लोग ग्लोबली compete कर पाए. सो ये फोकस रखना, ठीक है, ये बहुत यूनिक हो जाता है. अच्छा, ये फोकस करने के लिए आपको 2 चीजें करनी पड़ती हैं. आपको बोथ फिजिकल एंड ह्यूमन एसेट्स में आपको इन्वेस्ट करना पड़ता है, राइट? आप सस्ती मशीन पे कुछ एक सर्टेन रेंज का कपड़ा बना पाएंगे. यदि आप एक महंगा बड़ा सेटअप बनाते हैं जिसमें वर्ल्ड क्लास इक्विपमेंट लगाते हैं, वर्ल्ड क्लास टेस्टिंग, कैलिब्रेशन इक्विपमेंट आप लगाते हैं. नंबर 2, यदि आप सही वर्कमैन, मैनेजर्स, सीनियर प्रोफेशनल्स यदि आप हायर करते हैं तो वो आपकी कंपनी को अच्छे से रिप्रेजेंट कर पाते हैं, बाहर के बड़े बड़े कस्टमर्स को अट्रैक्ट कर पाते हैं और वो आप बिजनेस जीत पाते हैं. यदि आप अपने दायरे में सीमित रहते हैं तो आप बाहर जाके नहीं बेच पाते. सो ये 2-3 चीज़ें हैं जिसके कारण कुसुमगर एक ग्लोबली कॉम्पिटिटिव एंड रिनाउंड नेम अपनी इंडस्ट्री में हो पाया. कि इन्होंने हमेशा क्वालिटी एंड इनोवेशन पे फोकस किया, एंड दे वर विलिंग टू इन्वेस्ट इन द राइट काइंड ऑफ एसेट्स, इन द राइट काइंड ऑफ मशीनरी, प्लांट एंड इक्विपमेंट, एंड द राइट काइंड ऑफ ह्यूमन रिसोर्सेज.
नहीं, इसमें थोड़ा डबल क्लिक करते हैं कि देर इज अ 0 to 1 जर्नी ऑफ एनी इंडस्ट्री और एनी फर्म, एंड देन देर इज 1 to 10, 100, 500 जर्नी, राइट? You're in that journey where you have booster rockets under you and you're ready to fly, right? How do you prepare for that journey?
I think that's a great question. I think the other way of asking this question is what stops certain companies from breaking off. Okay, so भारत में क्या है, बिजनेस को 0 to 1 जाने में, विच मीन्स कि चलिए आज आपने कल चालू किया और अब आप एक स्टेज पे पहुंचे हैं जब आपका धंधा सेट है, आप चल पा रहे हैं, आप इतना कमा रहे हैं कि आपके पास भी बच रहा है, एंड सो ऑन, यू आर मेकिंग इनफ मनी टू बिल्ड अ फैमिली बिजनेस ऑफ सॉर्ट्स और नॉट, राइट? इंडिया में सर्वाइव करने के लिए एंड थ्राइव करने के लिए businesses have to adopt certain set of practices. They have to manage the local regulatory environment, be efficient, let's call it that, about taxes, be very cost focused, be very tight, right? तो इसमें क्या हो जाता है, आपका धंधा बड़ा डिफेंसिव हो जाता है. आप एक मोड में चले जाते हैं कि आप डरते हैं कुछ नया करने से, बिकॉज आप यू आर ऑलवेज वरिड दैट यदि खर्चा मेरा बढ़ गया और अगले साल मेरी कैश फ्लो नहीं आई तो मेरा क्या होगा, राइट? तो ये जो चीज़ है, ये कई सारे बिजनेसेस को एक सर्टेन स्केल ऑफ साइज तक आके रोक देती है। एंड मैंने देखा है 100, 125, 150 करोड़ के आसपास तक बिजनेस आके कई बार रुक जाते हैं, राइट। प्रमोटर्स होते हैं एंड उनके बाद कोई बहुत बड़ी मैनेजमेंट टीम नहीं होती है एंड फिर वो चला रहे होते हैं। उससे ज़्यादा बड़ा करने के लिए आपको प्रोफेशनलिज्म लाना पड़ेगा, आपको फॉर्मलाइजेशन करना पड़ेगा अपने धंधे का, वेयर यू गेट आउट ऑफ certain set of practices, you build in systems, you build in processes, you get the right set of equipment and so on. And I speak largely of manufacturing companies. So ये जो माइंडसेट चेंज है ये इंडिया के अंदर नहीं हो पाता है। मैंने कई बार देखा है जो रोकता है बिजनेसेस को बड़ा होने में। जहाँ जहाँ पे businesses and promoters and entrepreneurs have been able to break out of this Chakravyuh, they are able to then, I think the journey for businesses, I would say from, let's say 100, 200 to 1,000 is not so painful once you break out.
Okay.
Because then you get into this self-perpetuating cycle जहाँ पे आप suddenly बहुत grow करने लगते हैं और आपकी growth बिना आपके involvement के भी काफ़ी हद तक drive हो जाती है। But चूंकि आपकी आदत होती है कि मैं पर्सनली सब कुछ देख रहा हूँ, मैं हर चेक खुद साइन कर रहा हूँ, हर बिल मैं खुद अप्रूव कर रहा हूँ, और आप रोज़मर्रा की हर चीज़ के अंदर आप इन्वॉल्व होते हैं और आपके साथ में यू डोंट हैव कॉम्पिटेंट वेल पेड प्रोफेशनल्स, उससे आप आगे नहीं बढ़ पाते हैं कई बार।
और ये systems and processes that you talk about, right? Investing in technology, investing in people broadly. At what point should an entrepreneur start to reflect on this, right? At point in their personal journey or in the company's lifespan, and once they, let's say, decide कि ये करना है, right? What are some of the first steps that they should start taking?
Great question. I think every entrepreneur, right, and every businessman, right, I think everybody wants security, right. At the first, the feeling is that my business is secure, my personal wealth, assets, liabilities are fairly secure, my family is well taken care of, and so on. India mein, I think once you reach a scale of around 100, 150 crores, or if you are making operating profits of 10-15 crore, typically you are able to, at that point in time, you are able to secure enough where you feel comfortable कि ठीक है, even if I have 1 or 2 bad years, we will continue to float, right? And plus you also start generating a little bit of extra cash flow to be able to fund this. So I think that's the size at which you can start saying कि शायद अब मैं इस साइज से मैं फर्दर एक और छलांग यदि मेरे को मारनी है तो मैं कैसे मारूं, right? At that stage, I think a lot of entrepreneurs have done it. I have seen it being done in a few ways, which I can talk about. You have to so you need to invest in a couple of things. I think there is a clarity of thought required on who you want to be, what you want to be, where do you want to grow, right? Which has to directly come from the entrepreneur itself, right? That opportunity recognition में भी बहुत समय जाता है, टाइम जाता है, right? तो एक क्लैरिटी बनाना कि हाँ मैं ये कर सकता हूँ, मैं यहाँ जाना चाहता हूँ और मैं ऐसे जाऊँगा, ठीक है? So that I think is one part. Then to be able to sort of execute on this vision, investment into, honestly the hard assets part is less important, right? Plant and machinery हो जाती है, बैंक आपको lend कर देते हैं आपकी कंपनी की बैलेंस शीट देख के, but once you have a clarity and conviction on this plan, hiring the right team, I think to be able to execute on this vision. देखिए क्या होता है, after a while आप खुद से अकेले से ग्रो नहीं कर सकते. You need hands and legs, you need leverage to further grow your company. So you need to hire those levers, you need to hire those extra arms and legs, right? And the third part of this is having enough trust and conviction in this team that you are building. ये मैंने देखा है, लोग I think पहला कर लेते हैं, दूसरा कर लेते हैं, बट ये तीसरे में बड़ा स्ट्रगल करते हैं, ठीक है? क्योंकि देखिए आपने धंधा चलाया हुआ होता है, आप पिछले 10, 15, 20 साल से बिजनेस चला रहे होते हैं. कोई नया बंदा आता है, उसमें उतना कॉन्फिडेंस बिल्ड करना, एंड आई हैव बीन लकी विद माय प्रमोटर्स दैट दे हैव इंटरेस्टेड दैट कॉन्फिडेंस इन मी, बट करना बहुत मुश्किल होता है. क्योंकि वो गलती करेगा, उसकी गलती को भूलना, उसको अलाउ करना, 1-2 बार और गलती करने देना, मे बी समटाइम्स यू मे इवन रियलाइज दैट ये आदमी जो हमने लिया है वो सही नहीं है, लेकिन फिर दूसरा उस कोई बात नहीं, दूसरा लाके उसके ऊपर भरोसा करना ये बड़ा मुश्किल हो जाता है. So I think it's a combination of clarity of vision, willingness to invest, and willingness to trust a team. These are the first three things that you need to get in shape. After that, I think a lot of it is steps that come through. But these would be the foundational steps.
एंड इसका अपसाइड क्या है? फॉर एग्जाम्पल कोई सोच रहा है मैंने धंधा बनाया है, कंफर्टेबली जी रहा हूँ मैं, मेरी फैमिली सिक्योर है, क्यों मेहनत करनी है, राइट? तो इसका अपसाइड क्या मिलता है फॉर अ प्रमोटर ग्रुप? How should they think about this?
I think fundamentally wealth creation for themselves. I think that obviously I think prestige, security, society. Every promoter, businessman, entrepreneur fundamentally wants to leave a legacy for themselves, right? Yes. And they want to create something that they can be proud of, that they believe in, and that leaves a path for their next generation to follow. I think family businesses are wonderful. I think family businesses have a sense of continuity and a sense of ownership that sort of non-family businesses are not really able to bring in as well. So I think it has to come from their inside, right? Because if you ask me, if somebody is making a certain amount of money every year, fundamentally why should they look at more than that? But that's what life is about, right? You want to do something bigger, better for your family and for your own legacy.
Yeah, and obviously Tata Group has left a legacy where
such an amazing legacy that
exactly
everybody can be proud of.
Exactly, and that if you are able to leave even a tenth of what they have left, right, that itself is something to cherish, I guess.
Yeah.
And but that is not possible unless you invest in a professionally
yes,
managed.
You have to become bigger. You have to be able to let go. Which is not easy. So I think in India they say that for a family, for a businessman, the business is a child, right? And in India, we know that people are unwilling to even let their children go, right? Forget their business. So it's so when you bring in a professional, being willing to entrust them, not so easy.
And so. When we were talking offline, you were telling me about your impressive client portfolio, right? What have some of these global brands done for you? And you are now part of their global supply chain. They're sourcing from you, moving out of China. How has that helped your business?
Yeah, I think honestly, getting global companies, global brands, sort of global multinational conglomerates, they can be transformation agents, right? The amount of learning that they bring to the table, right? For example, we are working now with sort of a European retailer for the last 5-6 years. We have learned so much about how to make our own products, how to test them, how to the supply chain aspect of where to source these raw materials from, what is the kind of right technical setup, testing equipment, etc. to get from them. So you end up learning so much just by working with them. So that's, I think, the most important aspect of it, which people don't pay attention to. Second is that these brands have the scale, size, network to give you the kind of commitments that allow you to scale a business. देखिए, मैं तभी पैसा लगाऊंगा जब मेरे को कम से कम 4-5 साल का आइडिया है कि मेरे को ये धंधा आएगा, ठीक है? छोटी कंपनियां, छोटे ब्रांड्स ये आपको नहीं दे सकते. जब आप बड़े ब्रांड्स के साथ काम करते हैं, वो आपको एक लॉन्ग टर्म फोरकास्ट और कमिटमेंट दे सकते हैं, जिसके बेसिस पे आप एक बड़े प्लांट के अंदर इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं. तो ये जो सेंस ऑफ कंफर्ट है, ये वहां से आता है. इन्हीं ब्रांड्स से सीख के आप दूसरे लोगों के साथ जाके काम करके आप ग्रो कर पाते हैं. सो मेरे हिसाब से देखिए, बड़े ब्रांड्स के साथ काम करना इतना ईजी नहीं है, वक्त लगता है, बिकॉज उनके क्वालिटी स्टैंडर्ड्स बड़े डिफ़िकल्ट होते हैं, उनके खुद के एनवायरनमेंटल हेल्थ एंड सेफ्टी स्टैंडर्ड्स होते हैं. लेकिन वो आपको जैसे टीचर है क्लास के अंदर आपको सिखा रहे हैं. देखिए, आप जब टीचर के लिए एग्जाम लिखते हैं, आप उसके लिए लिख रहे हैं, आप अपनी लर्निंग के लिए लिख रहे हैं, राइट? बट उस टीचर के कारण आप ये कर पाते हैं. सो दिस इज द इफेक्ट दैट बिग ब्रांड्स आर एबल टू हैव. even if you look at it from a nation's economy perspective, these are the brands that move entire supply chains into the nation. वो आपसे कपड़ा लेंगे, किसी और से गारमेंट लेंगे, किसी और से यार्न खरीदेंगे. इस तरीके से एक पूरे नेशन की सप्लाई चेन खड़ी हो जाती है, कि इकोसिस्टम खड़ा हो जाता है, जो सिर्फ उसके बाद सिर्फ वही ब्रांड नहीं, आगे 10 और ब्रांड्स के साथ आप काम कर पाते हैं. So I see immense value in the learning and the networks you get out of working for big brands.
Nice. Do you remember your first brand? The first time you went, made your first pitch to a brand, converted them. How was that process like? How do you go to a global brand and convince them to move out of China, say no to Bangladesh, say no to Vietnam, and come to you?
So I think it's very interesting. While we go and pitch to them, frankly, they have to make the decision themselves, right? Brands, they have massive supply chains, they have massive people and resources invested into certain existing supply chains. So I remember we have had, so our conversion ratio is not very good, I must say, but that's more because brands have to decide on their own that they want to move out of China. So there is an East Asia supply chain, right? That's composed of China, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, Vietnam, increasingly so, and Myanmar and so on. And then there is a sort of a South Asia supply chain, which is India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and so on. So brand has to first decide whether they want to move out of it.
Okay.
Right?
Move from East Asia to South Asia.
Let's say, in East Asia to South Asia.
Okay.
Right? Once they decide that, then I think for them to willing to buy, for their willingness to buy from you, your pitch has to be about an ecosystem, right? You have to be able to say ki, together, the raw material is going to come from here, the fabric is going to be made here, the garment is going to be made here. So together we can have a package that's quality and cost and delivery matches or improves upon what they currently have, right? And it's not an easy conversation. It's definitely, South Asia in general and India in particular is, I would say, at least a couple of steps behind where our East Asian competition is. So eventually the brand has, and because we are a little behind them, the brand has to be willing to invest in trying to help build this ecosystem. So we were very lucky that the first few brands that we started to work with was willing to extend that support to us. So yeah.
And ये support उन्होंने आपको किया because they were looking to diversify supply chains?
That's correct.
So ये जो opportunity है China+1, एक तो real है, but how far do you think हमारा runway है इसमें? How long is this going to stay and who are we competing with?
I think the China+1 opportunity is very real. Globally, so I would categorize global, whether that's retailers, brands, whether that's automotive companies or any other industry, into three groups. I would say half of them belong to a group where they already have major investments in China and they are not looking to move out because either China is already a large customer of theirs or they are so entrenched there that they feel it's impossible to move out. But there is a fairly large number that's willing to move out. Out of them, I would say half of them will only move out if they find the quality, cost and delivery equal to what they are getting in China or China, the entire East Asian supply chain, right? I would say that even after that, the remaining 15, 20, 25% of this pool is large enough for South Asia to take advantage of, right? So there is no point in saying that X brand doesn't want to move out of China because there are enough and more that already want to do and already want to invest. But it's incumbent upon us. It's incumbent upon Indian companies, Indian ecosystems, or I would say, even in combination with South Asian partners to prove that we can provide the right quality, cost, delivery, even, maybe slightly worse or 5 to 10% off there to these companies, which is still not proven whether we can do that or not. So that to me is the challenge. The challenge is not so much from the demand side. The challenge is from our own capabilities and ability to service the China+1 opportunity.
Got it. And then I will break that into two parts. One is the firm level challenges. The other are ecosystem / challenges that can be influenced with the help of the government, let's say, right? Firm level pe you sort of touched upon a few things. You were like, okay, invest in technology, invest in human capital, invest in cost, quality, improvement measures, right? From an ecosystem sort of perspective, क्या करना चाहिए?
Actually, I'll come back to the firm level thing, right? and this has been my experience over the last how many years that I have been running businesses. I think what big global firms that are looking to move into India are looking for, which Indian companies sometimes struggle with. First is, I think, long-term thinking. In Indian businesses, there is a mindset that मैं आज मैं आज 10 करोड़ रुपया डाल रहा हूँ, मेरे को 3 साल में इसका रिकवरी चाहिए. वो नहीं चलता है साहब. मतलब आपको थोड़ा सा पेशेंस रखना पड़ेगा, लॉन्ग टर्म रखना पड़ेगा, एंड यू हैव टू हैव एटलीस्ट डेकेडल माइंडसेट कि ठीक है, इतना समय लगेगा, हम इन्वेस्ट करेंगे और ये अपॉर्चुनिटी है.
और ये आप ग्लोबल ब्रांड्स के साथ कर सकते हो.
आप कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज वी आर प्रीटी श्योर दैट नाइकी एंड एडिडास विल बी अराउंड 10 years from now. Worst case scenario, you build the capabilities with them, you'll be able to service others. So why not, right? But Indian businesses struggle, number one. Number two, I think is a cultural issue around transparency and honesty a little bit. I struggle with saying that, but it's there. I think Indian businesses are typically born out of an environment which is where they would prioritize getting the next order rather than making sure that the customer is there for the long run.
Urgent takes over important.
Urgent takes over important. We are not able to think कि let's make sure that the customer is happy. We are not willing to sacrifice in the short run to allow for the long run. तो ये जो हमारे बिजनेस कल्चर का एक माइंडसेट है, ये ग्लोबल ब्रांड्स को अट्रैक्ट करने के लिए तो आपको इससे निकलना पड़ेगा, राइट? यदि आप गवर्नमेंट के एंगल से देखें, आई थिंक व्हाट honestly I would to attract global brands, while we are doing specific company and see, eventually to attract brands, ecosystems have to be present. You cannot just be that
ये इकोसिस्टम होता क्या है, पहले वो समझते हैं. So this word gets thrown around everywhere, right? You need an ecosystem. What is an ecosystem?
Let me put it this way, right? How do you build a competitive advantage over anyone else, right? आपके कॉस्ट स्ट्रक्चर के अंदर आप बहुत सारे एलिमेंट्स होते हैं. ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम यू हैव टू हैव a larger control over those elements. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's only about cost, but you have to have a large control, right? So that can only happen if in a certain area you have a cluster where the entire value chain is present there. जैसे हमारे आज आप यदि साउथ गुजरात में जाते हैं तो सिंथेटिक फैब्रिक्स का एक क्लस्टर बन रहा है, जहाँ पे यार्न वाले वहाँ पे हैं, जहाँ पे फैब्रिक वाले वहाँ पे हैं, जहाँ पे गारमेंट्स के साथ कनेक्शंस बहुत डेप्थ हैं, जहाँ पे मशीन वाले हैं, जहाँ पे डाइज एंड केमिकल्स वाले लोग हैं, ठीक है? तो एक तो कॉस्ट का एडवांटेज होता है कि ये सब लोग पास में हैं. अदर बिगर एंड मोर पावरफुल एडवांटेज इज ऑन नॉलेज एंड लर्निंग. आप एक ही इकोसिस्टम में घूम रहे होते हैं, आप एक दूसरे से बात कर रहे होते हैं, आप एक दूसरे की लर्निंग से सीख रहे होते हैं. जैसे एक सिस्टम के अंदर किसी आदमी ने एक फॉर्मुलेशन डिस्कवर किया. देखिए, एक इकोसिस्टम में नॉलेज बहुत जल्दी ट्रैवल करती है, ठीक है? वो आप चाहे कितना भी रोक लें, वो तो ट्रैवल करती है, ठीक है? तो लोगों को पता चल जाता है कि देखिए ये मशीन आ रही है, यहाँ से आ रही है, ये पहले 10 लाख में आती थी, अब देखिए हमने 9 लाख में ले आई है. फिर वो आगे सब लोग 9 लाख में लेने लगते हैं. अब यहाँ से 500 किलोमीटर दूर कोई मशीन वाला होगा, उसको पता ही नहीं चलेगा, वो अभी भी 10 लाख में ले रहा होगा, ठीक है? यहाँ पे एक मशीन थी, इन्होंने कुछ फॉर्मुलेशन में बदल के 40 मीटर पर मिनट से 50 मीटर पर मिनट पहुंच गए, ठीक है? ये नॉलेज उस इकोसिस्टम में घूम जाएगी. वहां से 500 किलोमीटर दूर बैठा एक अकेला आदमी होगा कहीं पे, उसको पता ही नहीं चलेगा, वो 40 पे चला रहा होगा. धीरे 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 आप कॉस्ट एंड क्वालिटी के अंदर ऐसा एक एडवांटेज बना लेते हैं जो बहुत मुश्किल होता है किसी और को कम्पीट करने में. यही तो एडवांटेज है आज जो चाइना के अंदर टेक्निकल फैब्रिक्स के अंदर जो सप्लाई चेन क्रिएट हुई है उसका है, जो हम जिसको ओवरकम करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. सो ये इकोसिस्टम क्रिएट करना बहुत ज़रूरी है. बिना इकोसिस्टम के ग्लोबली कम्पिटिटिव होना बड़ा मुश्किल है.
और ग्लोबली कम्पिटिटिव होना इज अ प्री रिक्विजिट टू डू एन एक्सपोर्ट लेड बिजनेस.
100%. एंड आई थिंक मेरा तो हमेशा ये कहना है, मैं जिनसे भी मिलता हूँ, कि आप डोमेस्टिक मार्केट क्यों देखते हैं, राइट? आप अपना मार्केट पूरा दुनिया मानिए, ठीक है? क्योंकि देखिए, यदि आप सिर्फ डोमेस्टिक मार्केट में सर्व कर रहे होंगे, किसी ना किसी दिन कोई आपको आके आपका एक रिस्क है कि कोई आपको आपके हटा जाएगा. लेकिन यदि आप ग्लोबल मार्केट सर्व कर रहे हैं, you have proven yourself that you are the best in the world to be able to do that. Right? And once you are the best in the world, you can keep building upon that advantage, and the scale that you can get is at a very different level. फिर आप local market को ignore भी कर सकते हैं.
और globally बेचोगे तो locally dominate ही करोगे.
100%. So your focus has to be that I am the best in the world. Once you're best in the world, you're automatically the best in your own geography.
And ये जो thinking है from trying to be best in in your local geography to best in the world, I think that's the thinking you were talking about. ये defensive thinking से जगह aggressive thinking.
Absolutely.
Forward looking.
So I think this is something which Kusumgar does very well. I think this comes from a relentless focus on product and innovation, right? आप continuously आप उस पे लगे रहें. आप short term मत सोचें. आप you invest in the right kind of assets, you invest in the right human capital, and you continuously are focused on how do I push myself to be the best. The other mistake that I see a lot of Indian companies do is they don't travel often enough. मैं दुनिया में इतने सारे शोज में घूमता हूँ, बड़ा मतलब मुझे ताज्जुब होता है कि इंडियन कंपनीज दिखती नहीं हैं. You know, people should be traveling out. Young entrepreneurs especially should be traveling around the world to see what else is out there. उनका competition क्या है, दुनिया में क्या हो रहा है, क्योंकि आप तभी compete कर पाएंगे. देखिए, वी हैव मूव फ्रॉम अ स्टेज. आज से 5 से 10 साल पहले, जैसे ये जैकेट है, जैकेट का जो कपड़ा है, ये पहले चाइना से आता था, आज इंडिया से बन के एक्सपोर्ट होने लगा है. लेकिन ये कैसे हुआ? ये ऐसे ही हुआ कि हमारे जैसे लोग बाहर गए, हमने देखा ये कैसे बनता है, हमने आके यहाँ प्रयास किया, धीरे 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 हम सीख गए. इसके लिए बाहर जाना ज़रूरी है. हम लोग अंदर ही रहेंगे, हम कैसे सीखेंगे?
And there are many global trade shows where you sort of get all of this learning from. वहाँ पे networking वगैरह भी होती होगी, I'm sure. Do global brands show up to these shows?
They 100% do.
Okay.
I think the idea business is a secondary aspect of it. The primary aspect of going into these shows needs to be learning. Right? Once you learn because we are talking about a B2B business. B2B business, cannot be pushed. It has to be pull. Right? If you are ready, if you have the right, if you're making the right product at the right cost, customers will come to you and business will figure itself out, right? It's this challenge, it's that bar on where you are today in terms of capability and where you can be, that needs to be bridged, right? For which exposure to the world is the most important thing.
Got it. Sorry, I'll bring you back to the ecosystem point that you were making. So there are two types of ecosystems, right? There are those ऑर्गेनिक इकोसिस्टम्स दैट एग्जिस्ट, तिरुपुर में हैं, जो आप गुजरात में कह रहे हो वो है, एंड देन इनऑर्गेनिक इकोसिस्टम्स जो लोग ट्राई करते हैं क्रिएट करना. हाउ डू यू ट्राई एंड क्रिएट इनऑर्गेनिक इकोसिस्टम्स? Is it even possible in your opinion?
I think it's possible, but it's not easy. Ecosystems are based on relationships of trust. देखिए, आप एक वैल्यू चेन के अंदर हैं, आप एक दूसरे को जानते हैं, आप पिछले 10-12 साल में एक दूसरे के साथ काम कर रहे हैं, आप उधार दे पाते हैं, आप इनको बेस्ट पॉसिबल प्राइस दे पाते हैं, you support each other with development, you support each other, you have referrals, conferences, friends, you discuss, etc. ये सारा एक इकोसिस्टम क्रिएट करता है. आप देखें तिरुपुर में नेटवेयर का कितना बढ़िया इकोसिस्टम है, मोरबी के अंदर आपके क्या कहते हैं, टाइल्स का कितना अच्छा इकोसिस्टम है. आप लेट्स से आप ये टाइल्स का इकोसिस्टम लेट्स से आप कहेंगे कि मेरे को कर्नाटक में खड़ा करना है, राइट? यदि सो देयर इज वन वे दैट यू कैन डू इट इफ दैट entire ecosystem with its value chain shifts, right? So let's say an ecosystem has components of plant and machinery, raw materials, intermediate goods and finished goods. That entire ecosystem will have to be transported. If you were to just bring in the finished goods, right, and then say let them figure the rest of it out, they will always be disadvantaged on cost and quality compared to wherever the existing ecosystems is. Because चलिए वहाँ पे locals आ भी जाएंगे, कर लेंगे, but वो relationships कहाँ से आएंगे, वो trust, वो knowledge base, that confidence in each other, वो कहाँ से आएगा? Every relationship is an investment, right? मैं आपके साथ समय बिता रहा हूँ, मैं आपको उधार दे रहा हूँ, मैं आपको कुछ बता रहा हूँ, etc. नया आदमी वो नहीं कर सकता, वो वही कर सकता है जो आपको बहुत सालों से जानता है. इंडिया के अंदर भी जहाँ पे so जैसे I think in Andhra Pradesh for example they are building a large textile park, right? So these companies are essentially importing, essentially lifting their entire supply chain partners also and bringing them there to build those ecosystems. So I think inorganic ecosystems, difficult, possible, but you have to make that effort to bring that entire group out.
Got it. And what motivates like an entire हमारी बनी बनाई ecosystem है, धंधा अच्छा चल रहा है, अगर मुझे additional investment करनी है, then I have to decide कि यहाँ करूँ या वहाँ करूँ essentially. So how does the government or someone convince you that okay, you have your factory in a particular ecosystem, we are happy to move the entire ecosystem, what would they need to do?
It's a very difficult question. Sometimes I'm asked by state governments, right, that we want to move certain industries out there. And they're willing to spend, right? They're willing to offer, sort of rebates, subsidies, what have you, right? I think it has to start with the customer, right? If, for example, an IKEA were to, say that, yes, I'm willing to buy X meters of, or X numbers of rugs, right? So the state government has to convince an IKEA. Then that entire supply chain will shift based on this commitment.
Got it.
So it has to start with the customer. So rather than looking inward, you got to look outward. I think that's what's critical. Once that happens, these large brands, and if the opportunity is attractive enough, the rest of it they'll figure it out.
जैसे हमने Apple को attract किया वैसे.
हाँ, I think that's a great example, right? And I think Apple is bringing all its supply chain partners here, right? They are figuring it out themselves. Obviously, then you have to stay true to the commitments that you have made, which is another story. But yeah.
So attract the big guys and then provide them a stable, competitive policy environment to support them, and the rest they will figure it out.
Largely, right? I don't think so. I think we overplay, at least, and I can say from the kind of customers that we have had and the kind of industry that we are in, we overplay the role of sort of incentives. I think the second point that you spoke about, Ronak, is about consistency and stable policies.
Yeah.
That's, I think, far more important. I've been working in the state of Gujarat for the last 10 years now. It's amazing, right? Do they give the most incentives? Probably not. But whoever is there are extremely happy because the industrial environment, the policy environment on that has been extremely consistent and stable. देखिए, कोई भी आदमी पैसा डाल रहा है धंधे में, वो चाहता है कि क्योंकि वो तो अगले 20 साल के हिसाब से डाल रहा है.
सही बात है.
उसके बाद में यदि रूल बदलता रहे, लॉ बदलता रहे, कोई भी आके कुछ कर जाए, बड़ा डर लगता है. इंडियन गवर्नमेंट has had a mixed record in this area, but I think this is far better thing to do, than sort of give money out to businesses.
Got it. So when you're thinking about this, doing business in India, right? There is so much chatter about our regulations. It's difficult to do business in India, etc. Right? What has been your personal experience running a factory? Right? Our factory laws, our labor laws are known to be notoriously bad, right? But what has been your personal experience?
So I think for it's sometimes a little bit like when you are a fish in water.
Yeah.
Do you know it's water, right? So because हम तो यहीं पे हैं and हम यही देख रहे हैं. But I'll give you a couple of examples, right? Because once you reflect, you realize. So I have seen the environment in Gujarat versus, let's say, other states where it's worse. So then that brings it into focus, right? I think in India, and then obviously as when I have seen Indian companies versus China, Korea, Germany, these are some companies where I have, some countries where I've had more exposure to, and I can see the differences. In India, I think if I were to ask anything of the government, it would be to tinker less, right? It would be to step away a little bit, right? I think the Indian government is very interventionist. I think they tend to believe that they can solve something, right, with a stroke of pen and paper, which I don't think it works in practicality. In India, what I've observed is, given the choice between making something simple and complicated, the preference is to do something complicated, which makes it so that burdens you with this, it's almost like cholesterol in your blood, right? That continuously you have to manage and run with, etc., which makes it difficult. We have a certain state, the way it is, it's difficult for me to visualize how else it could be. But if it were to be anything, I would say first, given a choice, don't simplify things rather than complicate things. Number one. And the second is, trust. Let it be innocent until proven guilty. I think most Indian regulations and laws start by assuming that
Guilty
the
unless
businessman
proven
is trying
innocent.
to do something wrong.
Yes.
It is so, and frankly, I mean, if you were to look through the laws, the labor laws and the industrial laws, I promise you, no company will be able to clear 100% of them. It is so maddeningly complex, right? So that's the second thing. Imagine it's simplify innocent until proven guilty. Third is, what is the role of the government? I think the role of the government has to be, broad infrastructure, roads, ports, that sort of thing. Trade relationships with great nations. Get me an FTA with Europe, USA. God bless you. That will be brilliant. And help bring global firm supply chains to India, make concerted efforts to do that. These are the kind of things that I would want. Money, exact money, incentives, etc., less important.
Got it. And this FTA network you talk about, this China+1, Vietnam and Bangladesh has some of the best FTA network, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? So competing with them when they have easy access to all of these markets.
So difficult. It is so difficult. We still have an opportunity. I think, I think the play that India can do is the ecosystem play, because these economies cannot do the ecosystem play because they are not large enough, right? India has two advantages, and the second is less important. I'll come to that. The first advantage is that we can have, a full supply chain, right? You can have a fiber, yarn, fabric, garment, and all reasonably competitive, right? So together you have something unique that you can offer, right? The second one is which I don't want to talk about because we want to be able to export without attracting based on the local market, but definitely it does not hurt that you have a reasonable sized local market that may be attractive to these global majors. And we are not saying that you have to attract the entire China+1 here. Even if you are able to move 10, 20, 25% of it, that in itself is transformational. So that's the pitch, right? That you can offer the full ecosystem here, because firms are willing to pay a little bit of a premium if they have that security, stability of having everything in one, under one jurisdiction in one nation.
Got it. Understood. And let's say big brands, Nike, Lululemon, what are they looking for when they're looking at Indian entrepreneurs? You speak with them, I'm sure, right? What is the chatter that you hear?
I think everybody's figuring this out, right? And the world geopolitical, it's very interesting because every few months the supply chain strategy evolves, as they say.
Trump था, नहीं था, वापस आ गया.
अभी आ गया, अभी रशिया यूक्रेन चल रहा है, अभी नहीं चल रहा है, अभी देखिए लोकलाइजेशन करना है, फिर आपको पता चलता है कि यदि आप if you want to manufacture a garment in Switzerland, there are no people left to manufacture garments. So what you going to do, right? So everybody's trying to, so there is a part around where everybody's trying to predict the future and then plan for it. That's one. The second is everybody's trying to play around the rules that are being formed a little bit. We are in a good situation, right? If you were to offer a credible alternative to China, brands will shift, or at least they will shift a certain. So we are in talks with one of the, a large Japanese retailer which has sort of made an internal commitment to move 25% of its business out from China to India. Now it's the ability of Indian business to execute on that. That's a bigger challenge. The opportunities are there. Yes, there are certain businesses that are, that will continue to be in China because the Chinese market is already very large for them. Right? If 10, 15, 20% of their business is already out of China, they cannot afford to, piss off the local government there, right? But if you are able to offer a credible alternative, I think a large portion can shift to India.
And that's the other thing people underappreciate, that China, one, it's a large manufacturing giant, but it's also a large consumption giant today. Like any strategy that any manufacturer has cannot ignore China as well. So even when they're trying to move out, they have to keep a certain base in China.
Absolutely, that'll always be there, right? But again, as I am at the risk of repeating myself, the opportunity in China is so large. Even if you were to take a small portion of it, it's amazing here, and every extra bit helps because the growth compounds. So let me give an example, right? 4-5 years back, we started on a particular fabric for a large global retailer. And at that point in time, we were 17-18% more expensive than China, like FOB to FOB comparison. So last year, when the same fabric, we were 2% cheaper. Now, what's changed? It's with scale, right? The more you manufacture something, the better you get at it, the local supply chains get created, and then every bit helps, right? So right now we are in a situation where it's not kick-started yet. It's still in the process. The gears are moving slowly. Once the thing kick-starts, it'll flow on its own, because those natural advantages will start kicking in and attracting. Labor in China is getting very expensive. It's like $600 per month or something, right? And it's only increasing. So all the stars are aligned. It's up to us to make it happen, which is the challenge.
Got it. So how should a young entrepreneur, part of a family business, think of tapping this opportunity? What should he or she sort of plan for when they're planning for the future of their firm?
I think the first thing that they need to do is to so I think there are two parts. Firstly, they got to learn the nuts and bolts of the business. Right?
पहले धंधा कैसे चलता है? पैसे कहाँ बन रहे हैं?
कॉस्टिंग क्या है? आप ये चीज कैसे बनाते हैं? ये कैसे बनती है? एक स्टेप से दूसरा स्टेप, मशीन चलाइए आप कुछ दिन, आप देखिए समझिए कि ये क्या चलती है, क्या होता है. Let's say you are running a ball bearing factory, understand the metallurgy and so on and so forth. तो and हर चीज का आटे दाल का भाव ना, मतलब यहाँ एक रुपया कहाँ जाता है, राइट? ये तो धंधा बड़ा समझना बड़ा जरूरी है.
ये फंडामेंटल, इसके बिना तो हो ही नहीं सकता.
कस्टमर के पास जाइए, बैठिए, वो क्या 5 सवाल पूछता है, क्या करता है, 2-4 साल तो आप बैठ के सीखिए. ये बड़ा मतलब बड़े क्लीशेड एंड बड़ी ऑब्वियस सी बात बोल रहा हूँ.
ये इंपॉर्टेंट है,
बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. लोग somehow करते नहीं है जितना करना चाहिए. दूसरा, and I would say equally important, which they 100% miss out on, is travel. दुनिया में, जैसे मैं तो टेक्सटाइल की बात करूंगा, सैकड़ों शोज होते हैं पूरी दुनिया में. आप जाइए.
What's your favorite show? Where do you like to travel and you see the highest value?
Great question. I think we have a show called Textile.
Okay.
It happens in Frankfurt every 2 years, and that's, I think, every time I am there, while we have our own booth and stall, and I spend some time there, I spend time just traveling and seeing what everyone else in the world is up to. So you learn so much, you make networks and connections, so all of these are opportunities for you to get a little better than where you were, right? And come closer to everyone else. So I think that's the opportunity. If you are young, if you are 22, 24, 26 years old, you should be spending time in the factory and then time in these shows and at customers. जो आप देखिए, आप let's say you are from a business family, right? And you have come into the business. You obviously want to do something unique, different, new compared to the previous generation. Where are you going to get these ideas from? You are going to only get them as you are traveling, right? So I think that's super critical.
But so you found a lot of value in these global shows, right? If you want to create similar shows in India, what can the government do? If I want to build something at that scale, bring in global partners, etc., do you think there is a role for government to do something like that?
I think the only thing that government can do is help take people from India to these global shows, right? And over a period of time, as these industries, so for example, the textile shows in Shanghai used to be fairly weak, I would say 15 years back, right? But today everybody turns up there, right? Because the industry shifted. So to be able to, while the government tries to, and you can try to create something like that, it cannot really be done out of coercion. It'll have to happen organically.
But coming back to our young entrepreneur entering the family business, पहले धंधा समझ लिया, फिर ये सारे global trade shows में जाके new ideas have come. Now how do they start executing? What do they start doing?
Sure. So I think every business goes through a certain trajectory, right? And I'm assuming you have reached a certain stage where the business is stable and profitable, and you have additional capital to sort of try and do something new. So obviously you have to come up with your idea. You have to come up with something. You got to try and pilot it out and see whether it works or not, and build that credibility within the business. And parallelly, you have to, if you want hands and legs to create that, you'll have to start formalizing the business. That's the other part that I would suggest, right? So figure out whether your business is run cleanly based on sort of established systems, processes, accurate to the letter of the law. build a team which can be with you for the next 20 years, right? आदमी तभी जंप लेता है जब उसको लगता है कि उसके साथ में 5 और लोग हैं जो आगे उसके साथ में जाएंगे। आप वो टीम खड़ी कीजिए। मेरे जो प्रमोटर हैं सिद्धार्थ, तो हमेशा कहते थे कि वो मतलब कि उन्होंने जो इंक्लूडिंग माई सेल्फ जो टीम बनाई है उसके बाद it gave him the confidence to go out the way it did. Build it out, figure it out, build a team, and keep going. I think that's what I would say.
How do you build a team? How did you see yourself building a team or a team being built around you? What is it that you're looking for?
Great question. And over a period of time, my opinion on this has changed. I used to prioritize aptitude and background a lot more earlier. Now, frankly, what I want is the right attitude, people willing to sort of dedicate themselves to a cause, believe in you, people who you can carry along with you in a mission, right? I think in building a team, you have to allow for failures from people. Everybody will make mistakes. You cannot react. You have to allow them, chances, a few chances here and there. And even if later on they leave you or you realize they were not the right fit, you have to have the ability to forget, right? And not let old scars hurt you. So that's something, right? Some of our best people that we have in our company today have been people who started out at very different roles, very humble, and they were able to sort of मतलब जो आप कहते हो, क्या वो बंदा समझ पाता है, कर पाता है, इज फार मोर इम्पोर्टेंट देन वो कि उसकी डिग्री क्या है, कि वो उसने कहाँ से आया है। ये सब चीज़ें ज़रूरी नहीं हैं। हम इन सब चीज़ों पे थोड़ा ज़्यादा ध्यान देते हैं, मुझे कई बार ऐसा लगता है।
ये अभी ऑपरेटर बोल रहा है
जी।
ये दिस योर एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ रनिंग द बिजनेस शोज, आई एम श्योर।
नहीं तो मैं तो मेरे बारे में भी कहूँगा, जब मेरी पहली अपॉर्चुनिटी मिली धंधा चलाने की, आई वाज बारली 31-32 years old, right? For the promoters at that point in time to interest me, right? यदि सिर्फ देखा होता तो पे कह देते ना कि भाई 30 साल के लड़के को कौन धंधा देगा। So you have to be able to take that leap of faith, which people struggle with.
Nice. And what are some of those mistakes that you have made that you reflect back on your journey, where you're like either you have learned a lot from them or you're now a better sort of an operator as a result of?
Yeah, I think I've definitely been more impatient than I need to be. And so in the earlier part of my operating journey, मैं क्या होता कि कुछ नहीं हो रहा होता था तो मैं बड़ी जल्दी हट जाता था, राइट? कि ठीक है ये नहीं होगा। आई थिंक B2B बिजनेसेस में मैंने देखा है कि वक्त लगता है। कुछ चीज़ें 3, 4, 5, 6 महीने में हो जाती है, कुछ चीज़ों को 2.5-3 साल लगता है। पैराडॉक्सिकली जितना ज़्यादा समय लगता है किसी धंधे को कन्वर्ट होने में, उतना लंबा वो आपके साथ टिकेगा।
अच्छा।
बिकॉज क्लियरली किसी और आदमी को भी उसमें घुसने में 2.5-3 साल लगेगा।
फेयर।
सो ये चीज़ मैंने सीखी है कि यदि आपको पता है कि इसमें पैसा बनेगा एंड आप इसके लिए सही हैं इस अपॉर्चुनिटी के लिए, तो आप लगे रहिए।
हाँ, डटे रहो।
आप डटे रहें, आप उसको छोड़े ना, नंबर 1। नंबर 2, आप यदि मीटू कर रहे हो तो आप नहीं चलोगे।
ओके, एक्सपेंड क्या है ये?
देखिए, यदि कोई और आदमी है वो भी वही चीज़ कर रहा है जो आप कर रहे हो, और आप कस्टमर के पास जाते हो, कहते हो ठीक है साहब ये मैं आपको 5% डिस्काउंट पे दे देता हूँ, वो अगला 10% डिस्काउंट देके वो धंधा ले लेगा। आप शायद आपको कुछ समय के लिए वो धंधा मिल जाए, वो नहीं मिलेगा। आपको अपनी ही जगह बनानी पड़ेगी। आप किसी और को कॉपी नहीं कर सकते, और आप जो दूसरे लोग कर रहे हैं वो कर सकते हैं, लेकिन वो लंबा नहीं चलेगा।
और इसके लिए एक्सपोजर चाहिए।
इसके लिए एक थोड़ा हिम्मत चाहिए कि हाँ मैं ये कर सकता हूँ, जो समय के साथ आती है, 1-2 सक्सेसेस के साथ आती है। एंड आई थिंक तीसरी चीज़ जो मैंने सीखी है इज़ दी पावर, एंड मैं अभी भी सीख रहा हूँ। I am particularly a very work in progress. I think this is a question better asked to me 20 years from now, I would say. I think is the importance and power of people. मतलब यदि आपके पास आपकी टीम अच्छी है, सेट है, और वो आप पे भरोसा करती है। देखिए, सब लोग अच्छे ही होते हैं, ठीक है, बट वही आदमी बहुत अच्छा काम कर पाता है यदि वो आप में बिलीव करता है और आपके विजन में बिलीव करता है। तो पीपल आर व्हाट क्रिएट अ बिजनेस। ये मैंने तो देख के ही जाना है, सीख के ही जाना है।
नाइस। And how has this shaped your leadership style? What kind of a leader have you become now?
Again, I think
Question
I'm
for
still
10
learning.
years.
So I think I definitely give a longer rope than earlier. I definitely, I spend more time on people than I used to earlier. I spend more time on communication than I used to earlier. Do more earlier and less later. I think that's sort of how I would say it.
Interesting.
जब आप कुछ नया कर रहे होते हो या जब कोई नया आदमी आता है, पहले आप बहुत ज़्यादा समय उनके साथ बिताएं, आप उनको समझाएं, आप उनको ट्रेन करें, आप अपना विजन समझाएं एंड सो ऑन सो फोर्थ. एंड जब वो बंदा सेट हो जाता है तब आप उसको छोड़ दीजिए. जब फिल इट, शट इट, फॉरगेट इट, राइट. एंड उसको करने दीजिए. देखिए, आदमी तभी अच्छा काम करते हैं जब उनको खुद की ओनरशिप आती है कि ये मेरा काम है, राइट. सो आफ्टर वाइल व्हेन दैट पर्सन इज सेट, you got to back off, right? Hire the right guy, give clear directions, and then, clear accountabilities and let them free.
Got it.
That's sort of what my style has evolved to. It was far more interventionist earlier.
Nice. So,
जैसे भारत सरकार की मैं बात कर रहा था, राइट. मैं तो भारत सरकार को भी यही कहूँगा, आप सेट कर दीजिए माहौल, डायरेक्शन दे दीजिए, फिर आप थोड़ा पीछे हट जाइए. तो वो भारत सरकार पहला कर लेती है, दूसरा करने में थोड़ा.
And give them space to make mistakes.
Give them space to make some mistakes, and don't sort of don't try to don't treat a mistake as a crime. I think that's something that we struggle with in this country.
That's fine. So last few questions for you. One is how do you see this sector that you're part of evolving? Where are we in the larger scheme of things, and where do you see it heading?
So if I talk about the broader technical fabrics, technical textiles space, India is very small, very minuscule today. Even a large proportion of technical textiles continue to be imported into this country. So there are, I think, two different themes that will play out over a period of time. One theme is indigenization, which is, I think, up and running, and I think that is something that's going to grow drastically. So there is a definite focus on indigenization that will continue to drive the growth of those industries, and I think that's something I'm less worried about. I think that's going to play out on its own, and I think we should become a fairly indigenous
localization
manufacturing, because scales in India have reached a certain size that it makes sense to invest for businesses into company. The one that I worry about, Ronak, is that companies are not looking to go global. Right? I think that way Kusumgar is a bit of an exception, and I think that's if I were to urge, I think that's where I would look for people to look global rather than just stay focused on India. And maybe I hope once the local market is saturated that they will do so, but it's not apparent or it's not obvious to me that that's going to happen.
Got it. And this also leads me to, so what's next for Kusumgar?
That's a great question. I think, and I discuss it internally in the company and with the promoters and so on. I think there is a certain scale and size that we have reached. So we have, so there is the journey of 1 to 10 and then 10 to 100 has sort of, has happened. But the 100 to 1000 journey is going to be different. I think for us, it's going to be about looking at, so we define ourselves as a technical products company, right? Dabbling in material sciences. So it's going to be about looking at other different kinds of materials beyond the current range of synthetic fabrics that we do. So I think that's one major part of it. Expanding the product portfolio range. Second is about going global, building presence, partnerships, alliances around the world across the kind of things that we are doing. What's going to happen is that, everything that we have done so far has been organic, right? We have grown over a period of time learning internally. In the second phase of our journey, it could be a lot more inorganic, where we, sort of learn from somebody who has already done it and bring it here and then build it out so as to speed up the pace of growth.
Can you make that real for me? What does this mean?
Sure. For example, let's say, let's say you tomorrow you want to make films, right? Laminates and so on. Now, for me to try and develop this technology in India indigenously, organically, may take a decade, right? But if I were to find the right opportunity, now that could be in terms of an acquisition, that could be in terms of a technology transfer, it could be a joint venture partnership, that will be a faster way for me to acquire those capabilities. And those are the kind of things that we are far more open to at the scale that we are in than we were earlier.
Got it. And how does this knowledge transfer sort of happen, right? Is partnerships the only way for having rapid knowledge transfer?
I think knowledge transfer, especially process knowledge.
Process knowledge, yeah.
Process knowledge, it's very difficult to do it without partnering, without having somebody on board who is already doing it. The way I talk about it, it's like, let's say if I were to give you all the equipment that a Michelin star restaurant has, if I were to give you the recipes and if I were to give you the ingredients and you had, step by step all the instructions, I'm sure you were not able to cook that meal, right? The best possible opportunity you have is if you have that Michelin star chef standing next to you and you are seeing him doing this day in, day out, right? Then you have, over a period of time, maybe you can learn how to do it.
Got it.
Especially in process knowledge, I think that's the only way. This takes investment, investment in the technology, investment in people, and most importantly, investment in time, because it just takes a long time.
And global brands, coming back to that, global brands help you. Global brands are your Michelin chefs, I guess.
They direct you towards them, right? So they are a very important part of the equation. So all global companies, whoever you serve, they already have access. They know, they can help you with to go in this direction. So it has to start with somebody interested in buying from you and then them helping them put it together. But you got to walk the distance. Nobody else can do it for you.
Got it. No, thanks a lot, Ankur. Thank you for your time. This has been very informative for me. Great takeaways from building businesses from an operator's perspective. I hope that we can sit down some other day again once you have made this 10,000 crore sort of jump and learn more from you. Any parting advice for us at Fed? You are very well clued into the work that we do. Anything for us, anything for me, anything for the podcast? This is our first episode.
I think it's a great initiative, firstly, Ronak. I'm not sure if what I said was, and how it would help people, but I hope it does. I think you guys, the work that you do in helping policymakers in the nation is truly welcome. In general, and I spoke about this during our conversation, helping the government realize that to avoid tinkering, to avoid policy changes, to keep the policy environment as stable as possible, and to believe in businesses, right, rather than look them as potential wrongdoers. That's, I think, if that's a mindset shift that Fed can help bring about, I think that'll be a great benefit to the nation as a whole.
Great. And this is something that I'm going to start doing. I would like you to tag one person that you know who would benefit or who we would benefit from sitting with.
It's a great example. So a completely different industry, but I've been a great fan of MKU. They are a manufacturer of bulletproof jackets and optical solutions out of Lucknow.
Okay.
I think they do amazing work. They are a global exporter of finished products, which is truly rare because these are highly technical products, right? And they have built it out completely organically in UP. So I think I would definitely recommend that you speak with them.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Ankur. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ronak. My pleasure.